When it comes to old media, it's pretty interesting to see how far we've come in terms of what we use for watching TV shows or films, filming home videos, or listening to music. We've gone from using tapes to record things such as movies or music to going fully digital where you don't need to waste $40 on a ton of reels. But even with digital reigning supreme over everything, I still prefer physical media over digital because you actually own that media instead of paying $20 for a streaming service that would remove movies or TV shows the next month. And even the feeling of opening up a case and putting the format into its respective player is honestly better than just hitting play and that's it. There are over 1,000 different types of physical media formats that exist, whether it's well-known types of media or super obscure types of media formats that have only existed for a few years until disappearing from the market. So today, I will be taking a look at a few formats that either have existed for only a few months or still exist today. Let's begin with the pioneer, the grandfather of physical media for listening to music from, wax cylinders or Edison cylinders. This was the earliest format used for listening or to record sounds from. You would have needed a gramophone that could specifically play wax cylinders, so you couldn't play it on a record player. Originally, they were made by Thomas Edison and his team in 1877 by using a thin sheet of tinfoil wrapped around a hand-cranked, grooved metal cylinder to create sounds that they could hear from a gramophone. The cylinders were wrapped with thick cotton padding and were packaged in a cardboard cylinder. When you open the packaging and remove the cotton, you'd have to hold the cylinder on the top and bottom because holding it on the wax part would mess up the wax and the music on the cylinder wouldn't play. But it's better than this. I think we'd all do this if that ever happened to us. If the cylinder was out of the packaging and was exposed to moisture, the wax cylinder would grow mold, and if you got mold on a cylinder, it just wouldn't work. So thank God they discontinued this in 1929. You can still buy wax cylinders on eBay, though some were semi-moldy or were just moldy in general. You could buy ones that have no mold on them. Hell, even some people still record on wax cylinders, but I doubt that they would sell in stores considering no wax cylinder gramophones have been made or sold in the 21st century.
Now, let's move on to something everyone knows of, cassette tapes. And let's just get this out of the way. Now, everybody has had this issue whenever they play a tape far too many times. Now, on to the actual review.
Back in the early 60s, Philips Eindhoven tasked two different teams to design a tape cartridge for thinner and narrow tape compared to what was used in reel-to-reel tape recorders. By 1962, the Vienna division of Philips developed a single-hole cassette. The media format became a standard in late 70s after the first portable cassette tape players were made available to the general public. The media then died in the early 2000s, with albums releasing more on CDs or vinyls rather than cassette tapes. But many musicians still release cassette versions of their discography because they're cheaper to produce than CDs and vinyls, though it's rare that they continue to do it now in the 2020s decade. And to be honest, I would too if I had the mind to know how to do that. Now, there are many other types of cassette tapes, such as a stringy floppy or 30-minute mini cassette tapes. But I don't own those variants, but I do have pictures of them up on the screen here, so here's what they would look like.
But that was for music in the 70s and 80s. What about movies and TV, I hear you asking? Well, we got ourselves something millennials think my generation knows nothing about.
VHS tapes. You know, the tapes that could also get tangled if used well enough. There are various types of VHS tapes, such as VHS-C, Super VHS, and Compact S VHS. But a lot of people most fondly remember the standard VHS tape, which is the one I'm holding in my hand right here. VHS tapes were first introduced in America in 1977 at a press conference during the CES in Chicago, but it was firstly available in Japan in 1971. VHS tapes usually would come in a black color, but some companies would go a different route and change the color of the VHS tapes, such as Nickelodeon or Disney. There are also some smaller versions of VHS tapes for different camcorders, such as mini DV tapes, High 8 tapes, Betamax tapes, and Beta SP tapes. But the VHS tape initially came to an end, with the tapes being discontinued in 2006 in the US and in 2011 in Japan. The last company to continue production with VHS equipment was Funai in Japan, but stopped production in 2016 due to the fall of sales and component shortages. Did you know that Cars was Disney's last ever VHS tape? You know vinyls, right? You know, those things that could melt if in hot temperatures and could mess up your music if you rub your greasy fingers on a vinyl part, right? Well, did you know that they made something similar to the size of a regular vinyl, but they can actually play films on it? Yeah, I feel like people today don't know anything about laserdiscs, and I can understand that, because it was released at the beginning of the VHS tape and 4 years before the CD was introduced. They were also replaced with DVDs in 2001. But let's talk about what they look like. So, like I've said beforehand, they were the same size as a regular vinyl and were basically a larger version of a DVD. Near the hole, they have the label for the movie as well as some other things too. To play them, you'd have to get a Laserdisc player, which I don't have, and then put side A on the bottom of the tray. After side A was done, you would then have to flip them to the other side, like you would have to do for a record. Now, let's move on to something for computers, floppy disks. Floppy disks were popular in the 70s and had a decline in the late 90s. They were used to store data on computers, and you could practically fit anything on here as long as the file was in between 100 kilobytes and 1.44 megabytes. There were a few different types of floppy disks, the three most well-known ones being an 8-inch floppy disk, 5-inch floppy disk, and a 3-inch floppy disk. Now, as for the design, they're pretty simple. The shell of the floppy disk is made out of thin plastic, and with the disk itself made out of some sort of super thin plastic. There's a metal part on the top of the floppy disk that covers the disk itself, and to be honest, it's pretty fun to mess with from time to time. Hey, guess the silhouette of this object. Time's up, it's an 8-track tape. The tapes obviously contained 8 tracks and was basically an endless loop, meaning after all of the tracks ended on the tape, it just restarted the tape altogether and played the tracks again. They got popular when the Ford company started including 8-track players in their cars starting in 1965. Due to its convenience and portability, the format continued to stay popular, with a home 8-track player introduced the next year and as well as the boombox type players. But the format initially died in 1978 with sales rapidly decreasing throughout, along with 8-track players being less common in the late 70s, as well as cassette tapes taking over.
So we're practically done with talking about media from formats that are practically obsolete nowadays, besides cassette tapes. So now, let's talk about some media formats that are still around nowadays, like DVDs.
DVDs are basically like laser discs, but smaller, one-sided, and are easier to hold. The discs can store videos and can store up to 4.7 gigabytes of data. You basically see these when you see movies and TV shows, Windows and Mac operating systems, and video games from 1994 to the present. There exist different types of DVDs, such as DVD-ROMs and double-sided discs, but we'll talk about all of those in a separate video in the future. But for the packaging, it's a plastic case this time. I mean, sure, VHS tapes has similar packaging, but it would either be a cardboard sleeve or a thin plastic case, similar to what you would see if you opened up an action figure. But the packaging for DVDs is so much better than what we've had before for the previous media formats. The cases are thinner, more sophisticated, and you can actually fit sweepstakes inside of the cases. There are also Blu-rays too, but those got discontinued last year, as well as FlexPlay, which was basically a rental disc that would become unplayable after 48 hours of usage. But it never got really popular, so thank God for that. CDs or compact discs are another type of physical media format that you see nowadays. This is different from DVDs, the obvious one being that it can only hold audio on it, not movies or operating systems. There exists different types of CDs as well, such as vinyl discs, photo CDs, super video CDs, CDI, and CD mini. All are either obscure or discontinued. As for the packaging of the CD, these are honestly better than all the other physical media's packaging combined. It's made out of clear plastic and it's sometimes durable. The packaging used for CDs, if you drop it, could crack or shatter. The packaging for CDs are also used as cases for the CD itself, which makes them so much better than vinyls. Cassette tapes actually use similar materials for their packaging too, which makes them better than vinyls as well. There exists dual CD packs, which include 2 or 4 CDs in the form of book-like packaging. The packaging sucks. It could take up 2 times more room on your shelf due to the casing being chunky, and they don't even have different spines. They're both the same and I hate it. The booklet just sits in there and doesn't even stay there like they do in regular CD packaging. Hell, they don't even do it like how they do it with DVD booklets, which honestly sucks. While we're at it, let's talk about the paper packaging for CDs. They're kind of a love-hate thing for me. The biggest pro about paper packaging for CDs is that they're sort of more durable than the jewel cases. The main reason is because you can throw it into your bag and you don't have to worry about it shattering. But the con for this type of packaging is that it's a little too hard to fit it into a CD shelf, and I'm worried that my Nurture CD will get ruined because of that. Let's take a look at one last physical media format that is obsolete nowadays: mini discs. Mini discs were a small version of CDs that was first released in 1992 and was basically kept in a translucent plastic shell. But the format was discontinued in 2013 due to how little record labels embraced the format, as well as the format coming in when the MP3 player format started becoming mainstream. Even though the format is no longer used nowadays, some musicians still release their albums on mini discs, such as synthwave musicians, Lemon Demon, and as well as Tally Hall. The packaging used for pre-recorded mini discs are the same as what CDs and cassette tapes used, but it's more of a taller version of a CD case and a similar size for what cassette tapes had for their cases. I like this format a lot due to the hybrid between CDs and cassette tapes. It was also the first CD format that could actually be erasable compared to actual CDs, which honestly makes this format one of the best in my opinion.
So that's it for my review over the most notable types of physical media and some obscure ones. I think maybe in the future I'll take a look at more physical media formats that are obscure or that have probably lasted for a short amount of time until being killed off by their makers. But that's it, and that's all for today. So see you all in my next video.